4 true and terrifying Halloween stories that will haunt you forever. Halloween. The very name conjures familiar images. Children in delightful costumes, bursts of laughter, glowing jack-o'-lanterns, and baskets overflowing with candy. It's the one night of the year when we're allowed to become monsters and ghosts, a night to celebrate fear within a safe boundary. But how fragile is that boundary? Welcome back to G, Horror Narration. In today's video, we won't be talking about legendary ghosts or cinematic demons. We will pull back the festive curtain to look at a much darker truth. The monsters made of flesh and blood, and the horrifying tragedies that have actually occurred, hiding behind masks and the cheerful shouts of trick-or-treat. So, find a quiet corner, dim the lights a little, and join me as we delve into 4 true stories of Halloween. Tales that will make you think twice when you hear a knock on your door on the night of October 31st. Our first story begins on a seemingly perfect Halloween night, a night that would forever be remembered by a chilling name. Story 1. The Candyman Killer. The October night air was crisp and sweet with the smell of sugar. For 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien, it was the most magical night of the year. He was dressed in an astronaut costume, a slightly loose plastic helmet hiding his soft brown hair. He could hear his sister Elizabeth's giggles and the rustle of dry leaves underfoot as they walked the familiar suburban streets of Pasadena, Texas. Beside them, steady and reliable, was their father, Ronald O'Brien. In Timothy's eyes, his father was his whole world, a strong man who would always protect him. The festive atmosphere was everywhere. Jack-o'-lanterns carved with demonic faces grinned eerily in the flickering candlelight. Timothy's candy bag grew heavier and heavier with chocolates, gummies, and colorful lollipops. As they passed a house that seemed dark and silent, the other children hesitated, but Ronald patted his son's shoulder. "Wait here," he said, with a smile that people would later recall as strangely cold. "Let me try." Ronald walked up to the dark porch alone, disappearing into the shadows. A few minutes later, he returned, his hand holding out 5 colorful pixie sticks. "Lucky us," he said cheerfully. "They didn't have much candy left, but they gave me these last ones." Timothy cheered with delight. Pixie sticks were his favorite. He took the green one, completely unaware that in the warm hand of the father he trusted, he was holding his own death sentence. When they got home, the room was filled with light and laughter. Before going to bed, Timothy turned to his father, his eyes sparkling. "Dad, can I have a pixie stick, please?" "Of course, son," Ronald replied, his voice even. He even helped the boy tear open the packet. Timothy poured the powdered candy into his mouth. A terrible bitterness, unlike any candy he had ever tasted, surged up. He grimaced. It tastes bitter, Dad." Those were his last words. An excruciating pain erupted, tearing through his stomach. The boy began to convulse and vomit, his eyes rolling back. He died on the way to the hospital. At first, the entire town was plunged into terror, fearing a psychopath was preying on their children. But the truth was infinitely crueler. The police discovered that Ronald O'Brien was drowning in debt and had taken out massive life insurance policies on his children. The powder in the pixie sticks had been laced with cyanide. The perpetrator was the father, a man willing to sacrifice his own son for insurance money. Timothy's magical Halloween ended with his last breath stolen by the very hands of the father he so deeply loved. And from that tragedy, the nickname the Candyman Killer was born, becoming a gruesome reminder that sometimes the scariest monster isn't the one hiding in the dark, but the one smiling at you right under the light. If the first story shows that the devil can come from within your own family, this second story reveals how horror can hide in plain sight, concealed by our own inattentiveness. It asks a terrifying question. Where is the line between a Halloween prank and a real tragedy? Story 2. The all-too-real decoration. A woman was driving home after a long day of work on Halloween night in Frederica, Delaware. The road was busy, flanked by lavishly decorated houses, and then she saw it. Hanging from a large tree branch by the roadside was a human figure. She slowed. Wow, she thought to herself, people are really going all out this year. The effigy looked astonishingly real. It was dressed in a dark jacket, jeans, and sneakers. The gentle wind made the body swing slightly. The driver moved on, silently admiring the homeowner's elaborate effort. She wasn't the only one. A group of teenagers stopped, burst out laughing, and took pictures. "Best Halloween decoration of the season," one of them shouted. For nearly 3 hours, the decoration hung there, becoming part of the spooky, festive scenery. Everyone saw it, but no one truly looked. They saw it with eyes accustomed to the fake spectacles of Halloween, eyes programmed to believe that everything horrific was just a joke. Meanwhile, in a nearby house, a man was growing increasingly worried. His friend, a 42-year-old woman, wasn't answering her phone. A bad feeling crept over him, and he drove out to look for her. And then, under a streetlight, he saw the decoration everyone was talking about. His heart stopped. He recognized the clothes. He recognized the figure. It wasn't a mannequin. His screams were lost in the sound of Halloween music and the laughter of children. Her tragedy was masked by the very atmosphere of the holiday. When the police and ambulance arrived, the praise for the realistic decoration turned into guilty whispers. That night, there was no monster lurking in the shadows of Frederica. The real monster was indifference, the holiday illusion that had blinded everyone, turning a human tragedy into a gruesome ornament. Indifference can kill, but sometimes it is kindness, the trust shown when opening the door to a stranger, that can lead to a tragic end. Masks. They allow us to be someone else for a night. But sometimes they are also the perfect cover for evil, as in our next story. Story 3. Knocking on Death's Door. On Halloween night in 1957, Peter Fabiano's home in Los Angeles was filled with warmth. He sat by the window, a large bowl of candy in his lap, ready to welcome the tiny visitors. Then the doorbell rang. Peter smiled and got up. He opened the door, a joke and a handful of candy ready on his lips. But standing before him was not a child. It was a small statured figure, draped in a hooded cloth, its face completely obscured by a pale, emotionless white mask. "Well, an adult trick-or-treater you have," Peter joked. The masked figure said nothing. The silence stretched for a moment. "Trick-or-treat," the person finally said, their voice muffled and distorted. In that instant, the masked figure's other hand pulled not a toy, but a handgun from a paper bag. Peter had no time to react. A deafening shot shattered the quiet night. He collapsed to the floor. The attacker didn't panic. They slowly turned, blended into the crowd of people on the street, and vanished into the Halloween night like a phantom. The murder was executed perfectly, concealed by the very nature of the holiday. The mask, once a symbol of fun, had become the tool of a cold-blooded killer, turning the friendly knock of Halloween into a knock from death itself. The mask concealed the culprit. But sometimes, the chaotic atmosphere of Halloween doesn't just hide an identity. It also distorts the perception of right and wrong, turning a cruel prank into a fatal act of violence. Our final story is a heartbreaking testament to that.
Story 4. A Deadly Prank. On Halloween night in 2010, the streets of Columbus, Ohio were alive with laughter and music. William Bill Schaefer, a 34-year-old man, was walking home with his girlfriend after a party. The atmosphere was fantastic, filled with creative costumes and a sense of widespread joy. As they passed a dark alley, a group of 5 teenagers blocked their path. They weren't wearing any special costumes, but their faces wore a look of smug entitlement, amplified by the chaos of Halloween night. "Give us some money, old man," one of them said. Bill, not wanting any trouble, politely refused and tried to walk around them with his girlfriend. But the teens wouldn't let them go. They began to taunt and shove them. The fun-loving holiday atmosphere quickly evaporated, replaced by a menacing tension. The situation escalated in the blink of an eye. A few words were exchanged, and then, like a pack of wild animals, all 5 teenagers lunged at Bill. They punched and kicked him brutally. Bill's girlfriend screamed in horror, but her cries were drowned out by the loud music from nearby bars. The attack was swift and savage. When they saw Bill collapse, unconscious, the teens laughed and ran off into the darkness, as if they had just pulled off a harmless prank. Bill Schaefer was taken to the hospital, but never regained consciousness. He died a few days later from severe head trauma. The police arrested the 5 teenagers, but what shocked and outraged the community the most was their defense. Some of the attackers claimed it was just a Halloween prank that went too far. A prank. The word echoed chillingly in the courtroom. They had beaten a man to death, stolen a life, destroyed a family, and they called it a prank. Halloween night, with its implicit permission for mischief, had become an excuse for a senseless act of violence. It exposed a terrifying truth, that the line between a prank and a crime can be completely erased in the minds of some, and a night of make-believe ghosts can easily give birth to real monsters.
A child murdered by his own father for money. A woman ignored by an entire town in her final moments. A man shot dead on his own doorstep. And another beaten to death because his attackers thought it was a joke. 4 stories, 4 tragedies, but they all share one common thread. They happened on Halloween night, when the line between reality and illusion blurs, when evil can easily hide behind smiles and costumes. So this coming Halloween, when the children knock on your door, when you see the ghoulish decorations, remember that sometimes horror doesn't come from fairy tales. It comes from the world we live in. Thank you for listening. If these stories have sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to G Horror Narration so you don't miss the next video. And for now, you might want to double check your locks, because on Halloween, you never know what's really waiting outside. I'm G. I'll see you in the next terrifying tale.